There's so much groupthink involved, even though some days I wonder if all of evangelicalism's a cult. But there's not room for that critical thought. Like all my ex-cult friends, I would say 80% of them have walked away from the faith completely. And it's not because they don't want to believe in God. Like some of them still probably call themselves agnostic and still have like a spiritual expression to their life, and they want to believe these things. They still love Jesus. They still really like Jesus and the things that Jesus taught, but they can't find places where they can ask big questions. I mean, apologetics is all groupthink in a sense. It's like we have this belief, let's see how we can defend it, and you start questioning that, and people, and all of a sudden you become a dissenter, and they label you, and that's how they deal with you easily, is they call you a heretic or whatever, and now nobody can talk to you. So.
Yeah, and probably that is probably a good part of the reason why I came to that opinion, because when I left the cult, I also got deeply embedded into Christian apologetics. There were these back then. It wasn't Facebook groups or anything like this. They had these forums, and so I just joined one of the apologetics forums, and you could watch the back and forth between an atheist who's just angry at Christianity. He's so angry that they've shut off critical thought. And you watch an apologetic, some of them who, I don't know, that maybe they were new and green to the field, but their answers were non-answers. They were, well, you must believe this because the Bible says this. And this guy's saying, well, I don't believe it because but you would get some real people who gave real answers. And so I could watch the dialogue, and I'm learning as I go. But my favorite ones were the ones who, whenever they got confronted with something that they had no answer to, they just simply said, hey, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. And that was an open and honest person, right? There were other people who would just try to defend it for the sake of defending it. And, the whole thing, it was just so surprising to me. But it made me go back to my own history and think about the way in which I was manipulated. We were, in the Branham cult, we were completely brainwashed. We went through series of techniques. They had a series of techniques that they used to manipulate our heads. And as you're going through all of this stuff, you're basically trained to shut off all critical thought, and you're trained to assume that whatever comes from behind the pulpit, you must agree with no matter what. And so anyway, I wanted to have you back on the show to talk about exactly that, because as you probably have seen through the videos and articles I've been publishing, I'm trying to examine IHOPKC from the standpoint of Paul Cain and Bob Jones and some of the others. Basically, we're reinventing Branhamism, taking Branham's name out, not telling people where they got it all from, but it was Branhamism 2.0 with a new spin on it. And so if it is, it must have these same characteristics. And lo and behold, the deeper I dig, I find every one of them. So one of them is the manipulation, and the brainwashing is too narrow of a term. They have many techniques to control your mind, from, the music, etc. So I wanted to talk about this. What are your thoughts on just being manipulated in IHOPKC?
It's such a hard thing to see initially. I mean, it's to see it, you literally have to wake up in a sense, and like you're saying with groupthink, like to dissent and have a different opinion. There's so much at risk in doing that. And I think that that's set up that way intentionally. Before you even get into like the little things, I mean, the social impacts that happen, and you're well aware of this because you see people come and go. And when people leave, you don't hear from them again. It's not that they died. It's not that, the majority of them are still in church somewhere. Or maybe they left to go do ministry somewhere. But those relationships aren't existent anymore. That network is broken. In a place like IHOP, when you're so vulnerable, and what I mean by vulnerable is financially, having food on the table, stuff like that. A lot of people that they get away with it, I think, because so many of them are in the young adult college age demographic, which is already, known for eating ramen. So that's not unusual to hear a bunch of 18 to 20 somethings eating ramen. I had friends that literally got sick from eating ramen too much. That they it was like something solid for 3 weeks that they ate ramen because they didn't have any money. And so I think that those just knowing what would happen if you were to come in and question eschatology, or in the position you had, the higher up you were, the more you had to lose. Myself, I never was a leader over anything at IHOP, really. I was an assistant to a group leader for the internship, which just meant I was a glorified RA. So I got to live with the interns and tell them to clean their dishes and stuff like that. So wasn't anything too glorious. But if you were a teacher at IHOPU, or you were a worship leader on a worship team, or you ran an internship, any of those things, and you were to start questioning these things, I've heard so many stories where IHOP would remove their pay is what would happen. And we're not talking like people who make, I highly doubt hardly anybody made more than 20 grand a year. We're not talking big amounts of money. I think the biggest stipend, IHOP stipend I've heard to date was $1,200 a month. The majority of them were $300 to $500 a month. And you figure the whole time that I was there, renting a bedroom cost me around $350 to rent a bedroom in a house. And so if you were to dissent and start to question things, and all of a sudden you lost that $500 a month, that was significant. And it wasn't that they were firing you. They didn't fire you. They would just reallocate you somewhere. They would reassign you somewhere. And unfortunately, that position wouldn't have a stipend. And so there was so much real subtle things like that. That just to hear that somebody moved from being a worship leader to something else, and that they lost their stipend because of it, wouldn't make you think a whole lot. You go, yeah, because worship leaders are the backbone of this thing. They get money and marketing people don't, or whatever it might be. And so that's like the initial things that come to mind is the social impacts of the relationships you lose. And that was just a threat. That wasn't even an outright manipulation, if you will, but I think that kept so many people in positions of powerlessness.